Okay. Well, we're thrilled to have Linda lead this. I'm here as host and also as learner. I'm looking forward to hearing what Linda has to share. I've been looking forward to hearing her lead a session for some time. And so this will be enjoyable. Linda is credentialed as a professional certified coach, and she has 5 years of experience as a coach in a large school district. I think that's a fascinating application of coaching. I would love to see what that looks like. And she specializes in individual leadership coaching as well as coaching teams and groups in strategic planning and data-based decision making. And so this is just a great opportunity to learn from Linda and to know that if you have follow-up questions or are interested in follow-up coaching, to give her a call. She is available for that and has a great deal of knowledge and experience in this. And we really benefit from having her in the conference and sharing her gifts. Well, are you ready to begin, Linda?
Sure.
Okay. And as you do, let me just offer a blessing over this time together. And as you know, Linda, every pastor has the gift of gab, of talking and giving people a moment to catch up or to step in. But I think God can use that gift as well. So let's just give thanks to God. Lord, I thank you for bringing us together. I thank you that in this very busy season that we are able to slow down and to pause and to invest in ourselves and our leadership. I lift up Julie to you as she is seeking to develop and grow in her leadership and her ministry. We are blessed by her presence. I lift up Allie to you. Thank you for her valuable work in the conference. And I know that each of us have so much on our plates right now. Certainly Linda does, with having made a move this past year and adapting in ministry and in life and in family to everything related to COVID. Lord, I lift Linda up to you with thanksgiving for her leadership, for her knowledge, for her expertise. God, we pray that these will be holy moments and that you will bless this time of conversation and that each of us will come away from this time together with a sense of purpose and understanding and intentionality in our ministry areas in our lives. We thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that. All right. So I'm glad you guys are here today. Thank you, Blossom, and everyone at the conference office that made this workshop possible. Thank you to all the participants for taking time in your busy schedule to join me today. I pray this time will be valuable for you and give you tools for managing. My name is Linda Nash, and luckily I know all of you. I have a master's in education and I'm a professional certified coach. So in my coaching, I have done strategic planning, monitoring progress, the whole transition progress shifting based on the data. In other words, shifting based on what's happening compared to what we thought was going to happen, and what does that mean we need to change. So the learning segment of this webinar will be 30 to 40 minutes, and then there'll be time for questions after. I do ask that you please prepare to participate by answering questions in the chat section. And I thank you all for muting yourself. So our objectives today are to build knowledge around change and transition, a little bit of the difference between the two, tools for leading forward, so moving forward, and then what are your needs during this upheaval? Oops. All right. So these are the phases of transition: letting go, liminal space, and landing. We're going to skip letting go because we're in liminal space. And we'll return to letting go later. But right now, the less we know, the more we imagine. So let that sink in for a minute. We imagine the worst and believe it exists. And I love this quote from Einstein, because what we believe is our reality, and it's not necessarily the same one that other people in our circle are living in. Anyway, I just love the persistence in this one. So in this space, we have really swirling thoughts, chaotic emotion, and the standard response to that is to want to move away. So I'm going to ask you to just stay in the discomfort for a little bit. And let's share some things about what have you imagined in the last couple of months? And what are the feelings associated with those imaginings? So I had asked that you put it in the share, but since we're a small group, if you want to unmute and answer, you are welcome to do so.
Well, I guess since I studied online education for 2 years at the graduate level years ago, before I came to the conference. And so at this very start of all of this, I really got excited about the possibilities of what online worship and online small groups and online everything would present to the world. But what's really interesting is, as we've gone through these last 2 months or so, I've realized some of the obstacles presented, that it's really not, my feeling now is that there's more of like a hybrid version that will be more effective than a straight on. It's almost like my bubble has been burst. You know? That I thought there was so much potential in online everything, and I now see how that isn't so, that we need face-to-face, and we need more connection, and that online cannot give. And that's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, that must be really disappointing. So in a lot of these things that we've imagined and in the feelings associated with them, there's a real desire to want to make it stop. The fear to stop, settle the uncertainty. We want to feel grounded. One of the purposes of this session is to build on what we already know about change and connect with each other on where we are in the process, and to share ideas for moving forward, or for some people, for being where we are. And we'll get back to that in just a second. So liminal space, liminality is from the Latin word limen. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong because it sounds like the lemon, the fruit. Anyway, but it means threshold. So that's what is in the door. So between the two rooms is the liminal space, where you're in the in-between, you're in the threshold. And it has a quality of ambiguity and disorientation. And so, that links back to what I said about discomfort, is that, yeah, in ambiguity and disorientation, we are very uncomfortable. And in this visual that you see, it shows some way people can respond in the liminal space, the space between what was familiar and what will be. I'm sure as you look at this diagram, there are routes that you would like to take and ones you recognize because of your experience with uncertainty. And one of the blessings of this liminal space that the entire world is in together is that we're in it together. Normally, transitions are not so global. They're really individual. Even, individual companies, individual schools, they're kind of all in their own place as far as change goes. And so we're at a really unique time where we're blessed that we're all in it together, and we have a connection with the entire body of Christ. So it's really kind of a beautiful thing. But it might not feel well. I have to, it's like my head gets that. My head gets that it's a beautiful thing, and that we're all in this together. And I know from the work that I've done and the reading that I've done that this liminal space um, is really where a lot of opportunity lies. But it's also really hard to be here. And in my experience, especially working with teachers, is they don't want to stay in the liminal space. They want to fix it. They want to make a plan for what they're going to do and move forward. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I'll have to think about that one. There's a lot of value in the liminal space. If you can set aside the feelings, and there's a lot of varying feelings in this liminal space, you can really tap into innovation. I mean, that's what the liminal space is actually really known for, is that the new and unusual, the, hey, why don't we try this, is all of a sudden given permission to take over. So for John, I had to say the resistance is not just in Star Wars. People are resistant to change because they're losing something. Part of the disorientation in the liminal space is those strong feelings around, what does this change mean? People are uncertain about how things will be different. They're uncertain about what it means about who they are and how they show up in the world. And it's very natural. Most people would rather stay the same because it's familiar. The familiar, or the way we have been operating, has to get extremely uncomfortable before we're willing to step into the change, before we're willing to go, nope, it's actually more painful to stay the same and make that commitment to go to the change. And we're in this place where people don't have a choice. Like, we're here. This is it. So people like to spring to what it's going to look like. When will things be normal again? And as I said before, to rush from the liminal state blocks the creativity and ingenuity that is inherent in this free space. So for what's after it, so we were in this liminal space, and the question that I often get is, how long is this going to last? And really, it's individualized. It's based on our preparation, our experience in the liminal space, and then what does it look like to be landing? So let's look at the landing. The landing is the close of the transitional process. The landing is the time when we've adjusted to the change, when we've embraced new attitudes, new ways of thinking and acting. And in the landing space, you're finding that your day-to-day is more comfortable. Unfortunately for us, we are in the liminal space. We don't know what our new reality is going to be. We just have hope. And this leads us to the beginning of the transition process, which is the letting go. It's interesting to look at the transition process while we're so smack dab in the middle of it. And so we know where we want to be. We want to be where things are comfortable. We know we're not in that space. We're in the liminal space. And so why do we need to worry about the letting go, right? I mean, it's gone. February is gone. So let's talk about that letting go. We're only going to get to the landing, to the new normal, if we honor the old normal, what has been lost. So what has been lost to you? What has been lost to your community?
I'll just share that in this interim period, we don't know what the new normal will be. We don't know how much has been lost. So I think for me, the grieving of what's been lost is I don't know whether it's long-term grieving or short-term grieving. I don't know how much will return. The hardest thing for me, probably, well, there have been a lot of challenges, but when you spend years as a pastor, you have this expectation of what being a good pastor is. And there's so much right now that we cannot do to live up to our expectations or feel that we're living up to the expectations of our congregations. Helping people through grief, giving them a hug when they're alone. These are hard losses. And so that has been a challenge. I think I've adapted, and I'm not willing to fully grieve those things yet. I always live with hope. Because I cannot go forever without hugging those who are grieving, if that's what they desire. But we're also, of course, taking precautions. There's just a lot in the way of the emotional components that are tied to what we have lost in this time. And it's hard to find new ways to provide for those emotional needs.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me in the conference office, I think it's very difficult to try to figure out exactly what the churches and the clergy need in terms of information. And one of the things that I've found really poignant in this process is that I tend to compare myself anyway, and this sin of comparison with other conferences that may have more resources or may have a different relationship with their churches or with their bishop or whatever. It's been a real interesting study in how that works, because I do feel like I have to constantly, in the rush of things, things have been coming at us like a fire hose, and to try to balance our own health and boundaries while really wanting to do our best work at this time. And quite honestly, my job is very public, so when I make a mistake, everybody sees it. And so that has been a real struggle, because I really hate making mistakes. So so the sin of comparison has been really hard for me to kind of back away from.
And it's so much easier to give grace to other people than to ourselves. So give yourself some grace, Allie. Julie?
I guess for me, just that normal routine. I felt like I was just getting started, and then all of a sudden things changed for me. So finding what's trying to do my best. I also fall into the comparison trap sometimes too. Like, this is what I need to be doing, comparing to the person that was there before me. Mm-hmm. But just, I guess, knowing what to do, knowing what I need to do, I guess.
Excellent. So the only way we're going to get through is to truly let go. And the only way we're going to let go is to identify and stay with what is it that we're grieving. Because there is a lot of grief. And it needs to be acknowledged. People like to frame emotion out of conversation, especially in the professional realm. They often feel like emotion makes you look weak. And so in trying to frame the emotion out of it, we're not honoring it, and it's gonna come out sideways. I mean, it's there, and it's gonna be there. And so I just really encourage you that we can't zip to the new reality without the psychological transformation. And that's, change is an event that happens to us, or an event that we choose. Change is one thing. Transition is the process all around that change. And it's a psychological process. And so, most of you are familiar with the process of grief, the stages of grief. And you really just can't jump to the end to acceptance. There's meaning, there's value, and there's perspective going through that process. So let's talk about that a little bit. What is it? What tools do you need for leading forward? And one of the things that especially leaders feel very taxing, and I'm sure I think for all three of you, this is very true. People are looking to you to be confident, to be decision makers, to know the answers, and you might not have that. You might still be able to project the confidence, but there's that voice in your head going behind you that says, really, are you sure? And so when you're working with people, you really need to listen, and not just to their words. So listening is a coaching tool that we use a lot, but it's a lot more than just what people are saying. It's taking into account their body language, if we can see them, which is one thing I like about Zoom, is we can see each other. Pay attention to their tone and prosody. Prosody is the rhythm of their speaking. And one of the things that's really important to listen for is what is not being said. And to stay curious around that. In your listening, you are a better listener when you are genuinely curious about what that other person is saying to you. So embrace that curiosity. So listening is a great tool because, again, people need to be able to go through the grief process. They need to be able to recognize that they're in the in-between, and what does that mean? And then when are we ever going to get to the landing? They need to be heard. So another tool is to identify. And identifying, again, not just the stages of transition, but naming the blizzard of feelings, naming the process, naming what was lost, and really kind of finding symbolism in it all. And as I've been preparing for this class, I've been going through this grief process with one of my service commitments in the community, which is we do every year an annual convention that funds the region and brings everybody together once a year. Well, that did not happen this weekend. And so we're all in this place of, okay, what do we do now? And we actually met this weekend and decided, okay, so we're not postponing to the fall. We're just canceling this year. And we're going to move on to next year. So now we've got a team ready to get started in July for planning for next year. So we've got that. And then in the conversation, we were talking about, T-shirts and masks. And, one of the things we do at the convention is we sell merchandise, and people collect T-shirts from the conventions. And so we can have some really unique ones. Like the T-shirts that were made for the 2020 convention are now very unique and valuable because there were only 40 of them made. And anyway, so as we were talking about that, we decided, you know what, we need to symbolize the chaos that is our right now. And so what we've decided to do is we're going to make masks and maybe T-shirts, but definitely masks that have, something about the convention that wasn't. Or, quarantine convention of one, or something where we haven't decided what it's going to be yet. But we wanted to give people an opportunity to have a little bit of fun while also symbolizing what has ended, which is, obviously the old normal is what has ended. And, we're grieving this time that our community normally has to come together. So we're going to have a little fun with it and wear masks. In fact, I got one in the mail. I can show you. Samantha decided it's navy blue on black, so it's a little bit hard to see. So Samantha said, Samantha's my daughter, for those of you who don't know, she's my oldest, my 14-year-old. She was like, oh, I'll just use my fabric paint and make it stand out more. So it didn't quite come out the way she wanted. This is not up to her level of quality, but let me just show it to you. So this is the logo for another convention that I bought a t-shirt for. And when the t-shirt came in, it came in with this mask. And that's actually, my friend Tom also ordered the t-shirt, and that's how the conversation started about, hey, let's order masks with something on it to symbolize what's going on. That way, when we do get to be together again and have to wear masks, we can have masks that really celebrate. So the symbolism and the identifying is really important in the process. So in mourning, we've already talked about the mourning, that the only way to get to the end of the process is to let go of the beginning, let go of what was. And kind of as Blossom kind of said before, it's a little bit hard because we don't exactly know what's been lost. Like, what is it that we're going to be able to get back? And what is it that's just going to be different? So again, that really points to the process, and that we need to honor that process. And it's a lot like forgiveness. Letting go is like forgiveness. How many times do you have to do it? 7 times 7, 77 times. I stopped counting because you just have to let go again. And it's very similar to forgiveness. You get to do it again and again. So coaching is an awesome tool to use in this time, because especially for leaders, it gives you a safe space where you don't have to project that confidence and that assurity that the people are looking to you for. Coaching is an individual and safe space where you're not being judged, where the coach can help you celebrate your successes, and it really helps you play with the possibilities. So coaching is a really great tool, especially for leaders in the community who are having to put on that brave face and to shut down their emotion and not show it, because that will contribute to people's fear. They need you to be decisive and not emotional, whereas you have to honor your emotions, or they're going to come out sideways. So that's one of the benefits of coaching. And then finally, one of the important tools that we have in the liminal space, in the in-between, is planning for what's next. So again, we don't know what's next. We don't know, what restrictions are going to be put in place or removed. We don't know, are we ever going to be able to return to 70% of what used to be normal? We don't know. But by embracing that unknown and dreaming big, like, what do you want it to be? This is our chance to have brainstorming sessions where the most unusual idea and out of the box design can be one that triggers something that we're ready to work for. So I know Allie had talked about, the excitement around, ooh, people are going to be embracing technology and this is going to be fabulous, and kind of, that dreaming of how great this is going to be. And then of course the being smack dab in the middle and going, well, it's really working the way we wanted it to. Like, there's something we're missing. And so in the planning, you can take your experience of the letting go and of this liminal space to create what you want it to be. I mean, one of the things, no matter which of my resources I was looking at, the emphasis is really on how powerful this uncomfortable place is, because it opens us up to creation, to innovation, and to things that normally we would say, no, we're good. Or that's just a little too radical. I don't know if we're ready to embrace it. And so, no. The normal things that would shut down innovation is out of our way right now. So this liminal space is really fertile ground, and to work with your teams and your communities into, okay, we know we've lost something, we know we want something, so let's figure it out. Let's go back to that identifying and name, what is it that we want, and empower your community to work towards that. Because there are things we have control over in all this, mostly our own attitudes, but we do have control over that. So one of the things that I'd really like to stress is to embrace the process, is to be in that liminal space and let it give the value it has, which is creativity. Are there any questions on any of these? Oh, I should word that differently. Hold on. What are your questions about these tools?
We do want to welcome Robert. We're so glad he was able to join us. And you may have been saying something, Robert, there. Be sure to unmute yourself if you have anything to share.
I just in the beginning, and I apologize for being late. There was another webinar on PPP loan forgiveness, and that was a pretty big topic in our place. So I needed to make sure I was taking part in that. But I love this topic, so I'm just listening. I appreciate your presence. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad that you chose to do the PPP and through the end, because we really need to honor what our needs are, and that's a significant one. Blossom, are you recording the session? Can he go back and listen?
Yes, we are recording, and
Okay.
we'll be able to share it. Allie will be able to share it with the conference so others can benefit from this information.
Oh, that's
Wonderful.
Great. Thank you. Really appreciate that.
All right. So next, we want to talk about what the needs are of leaders in the community. Basically, what your needs are right now, not just the needs of the people that you work with and for, but what is it that you need? And you might see some consistency with the previous slide. The things that your community needs are the same things that you as a leader need. You need to have this opportunity to, you need to take care of yourself. That's really what this slide is about, is how do leaders take care of themselves? And in order to do that, leaders need to have someone listening. They need to have that place where they can be vulnerable, and it's okay. And, people have lots and lots of different people that are their listening partners. And so I just encourage you to tap into your listening partners. And also to do the identifying. What is it? Name what it is that you're going through, what it is that you've lost, what it is that your fears are, what your hopes are. And as we work through this liminal space and we learn more about what is really gone, let's mourn that. Let's honor it and let it go. And again, the symbolism can be really, really helpful in this portion of the process. So give yourself space to mourn. I know that there's a lot of work to be done to keep up with worship and the church community and the new and unusual needs of the community. And remember that in your self-care, you can't be everything as a leader without self-care. So think of it as, you're taking a flight somewhere, right? You get on the plane and they talk about, hey, if terrible things happen, the oxygen masks are going to drop, and these are your exits. And then they say what's really important for leaders to hear and difficult for leaders to hear. And I find difficult for women to hear because of their caring intuition. But it's the put your oxygen mask on first before helping others. Because if you can't breathe, you can't help anybody. So you've got to put that oxygen mask on so that you can be there for the people that need you. I envision that with my children, and it's like, if I black out because I have no oxygen, my children are fumbling, especially Elizabeth. Wow, she's clumsy, fumbling with trying to get a mask on. So they need me to take care of me. So again, I really want to stress the importance of meeting your needs, taking care of yourself so that you can be everything that you strive to be. One of the
I'm sorry.
No, please speak.
I worked on a video with a couple of counselors and therapists, and it's just in the newsletter today. But what really struck me was that because of our all hands on deck kind of philosophy since 2 months ago, a lot of pastors especially have they had boundaries, and they let those boundaries go because it was constant, all the needs of their, and they just felt like they had, because they couldn't do the normal things, they had to be there all the time, be available all the time. And I've been feeling that too, that I've been on the weekends, at night, I always answer text and emails. And I finally, watching this video was so powerful to me, because they said, you have trained people that you're always available, but now you have to train people again to say, these are my boundaries. So while you trained them the first time to not to just not have any boundaries, now you can train people to kind of go back and use it as a role model, model that everybody has sort of been on this all hands on deck sort of thing, mode of operation. And so it was interesting to me to hear that aspect of train again and kind of model that, okay, I need time for myself. Even though sometimes because I'm old, I forget to do things. I've had to start taking lists down, because my mode of operation during this time, because so many things have been coming at me, is to do things immediately, whether it's on a Saturday or a night. And now I have to kind of retrain myself to say, okay, that doesn't have to be done right now. I can get my list out and write it down for to do on Monday. And so I just think that's such a powerful message, that while we have been in this space of doing everything right away, we have to kind of come back and say, okay, how can I make things a little bit different so it's more healthy? Because this is not sustainable, how we've been operating, not at all, especially for clergy.
And to add, please.
I'm very grateful that you brought that in, Allie. Thank you. And sorry, Blossom, I didn't mean to.
Oh, no. Just to add what Allie's saying, I've seen and experienced that, especially for those, this would be clergy, but this would, I think, be everyone, as we work more from home, In the past, we had that delineation. This is my space of work. This is my space of family. And those have been merged and enmeshed, and it's very difficult to separate them out again.
Mhm. Yeah. Absolutely. And tied into that is with the planning tool, you can use planning and reflection. Reflection's another really good tool. Perhaps I should have put that on there. You can use that reflection and the planning to tap into, as Ali said, what do I need my boundaries to be? What do I need to retrain people as to how I'm operating? Because yeah, with the all hands on deck, what was normal, which was, we had a balance between when we were working and when we were not. In the last couple of months, that's been gone. So we get to plan to bring that back, and we get to be in this creative space where maybe it doesn't look like it did before, and that's okay. That we can really dig into how do we want it to be, and go for that. And again, everything is a process. So sometimes we go for something, it doesn't work. So let's use that data and try something else. I'm sorry, I'm a very process person, so so you'll see that. So I'm going to move it to questions and answers then. What questions do you have about managing uncertainty?
Well, I think just off the top of my head that the whole idea of planning in uncertain times is sort of, I mean, I would love to have the brain of, and I think I'm a pretty idealistic and forward-thinking person, and I'm very comfortable with change. I actually get excited about change. But planning in uncertain times, I wish I had like the brain of a futurist. They're so comfortable with thinking about nothing, and I had a really exciting conversation with my daughter recently, because she's in the business of training leaders. And I said, my gosh, you have this, all these minds at your disposal to ask, they don't really have the structure that we do. And she said one of the most frustrating things is that, and she's a young person in a larger organization, is that companies and institutions want the new ideas and the structureless ideas, but they keep on telling them, well, that's not how things have been done. And she's like, what is wrong with people? So I really encouraged her to push forward a little bit, ask I think they call them zillennials now. I don't know. There's the new classification. But I thought, she's young and she's dealing with even younger people. So I think that I may not have the ability to plan in liminal time as well as they do, but I really would love for young people to be able to, use their innovation now, because I feel so stuck not being able to plan. So I guess my question is, how do you plan in uncertainty? I'm just not getting it.
Right. That is a very good question, and it's a difficult plan to do, because you really have to set aside the questions that you have around, but is this going to be allowed? Or what if this doesn't work? And I'm not sure what I want. So how would I know what to plan to bring into being as much as I am empowered to do so? So when I work with people on planning, especially in such a vulnerable space, is I really encourage them to hear the questions that they have. Well, we don't know if blah, blah, blah. We don't know when we can go back to worship, or we don't know if we can go back to worship and even hand out bulletins, right? So free yourself up to imagine what you want it to be, to work with and talk to the other leaders in your community, and let go of the results. So you're kind of planning for um, you're planning for something that you can't guarantee. And a lot of people in their plans, they want to be able to say, this is a successful end, and this is what we're going to get out of it. And at this space right now, we have to let that go. And we have to go with, what do we want it to be? If it doesn't work, we haven't lost anything because we already did the losing, right? If it doesn't work, then we learn why and we go with our next idea. So it's really, really that process thing. And Allie, you are not alone in being uncomfortable with planning right now. And a lot of the schools that I've worked with before looking at transitions, that's where they really need the encouragement to let go. They need to let go of that, oh, we must be doing it wrong, or this is too much to ask, or, you know, whatever the shutdown vocabulary is to just set that aside and embrace the ideas that come to the table.
Well, can I ask a follow-up question? Just out of curiosity, I saw this morning or yesterday that APS is planning on going back in August. And that came as a pretty big shock to me because in previous conversations with teachers that I know, they said that their expectation was January. So in this idea of planning in uncertain times, I just wanted to, you know, how do you view that decision in the midst of planning in uncertain times?
Right. Exactly. Well, since I'm no longer with APS, I'm not aware of their thought processes around it, but having worked very closely with the people that are making those decisions. And one thing that Dr. Bowman, he's the Chief Information and Strategy Officer. So one thing that he often says is that you need to plan for the ideal, for the big picture, because you can't get a ship moving right away, right? It's easier, well, it's less trouble to plan for what you want it to be and be prepared to say, okay, we're 100% ready to open, our schools are good to go. And then for that to change is simpler than, oh, we're going to wait and see in July if the schools are going to reopen, and then we'll plan for it in July, because July is too late. So I think planning to reopen is, we're doing that at my school too. We're planning to reopen because of all the work that goes into that opening. We would rather be ready to open and not be able to open than to be unprepared. And what's interesting is Dr. Bowman is also, you know, one of the really taxing things, as you said, Allie, is around the technology and the use of the technology. And he's over the technology department. So it's fascinating how he works with the varying inputs that he has. And he's an amazing man. And the people in leadership at APS, they really think systematically. And it doesn't always come off gracefully because it's a huge system. But they really think through things that, you know, before I worked with them, I would not have thought through before.
Well, and one thing about I think is an impediment or obstacle to thinking creatively and looking for the future and all that is that in our church, many of the parishioners are not interested in that, or even in the leadership team. They say, "Well, I don't know how to spell this lineal thinking thing that you guys talk about," and blah blah blah. And they say, when are we going to get it come back in? What's the deal with that? You know, and so they're like you mentioned before, they're thinking very concretely about near-term stuff, and anything that's far out that might be different than what they used to know. They hear people talk about that. You know, the the new normal and all that kind of jazz. But it doesn't track with them. It doesn't track at all, frankly. And so they just want to get back to feeling comfortable and having a sense of what's going to happen next. And I think that the fact that you don't know that, it feeds that. To be honest, it feeds their need for something that's stable and they can count on, as opposed to we can't count on anything. So it's a dilemma, I think, and we're not the only church like that. I'm pretty sure. So
You are not. And one thing that I really encourage you is to use that listening tool, because people are going to come to you and say, we want to go back to worship. We want to be in our sanctuary together. And that's when you really need to use that listening tool to ask them, why? What is it about that space that holds meaning? Because it's possible that you can dig down into what their base need is and then be able to meet it in another way. So, as I said at the beginning of the webinar, people don't like change because they lose something. Because it means that their comfort zone is gone for a while. So they're not going to, basically, they're not going to volunteer to change. So what we need to do is dig in and listen. And what is it that they are holding their hopes on? What is it that they are needing? And how can we bring that into what we can currently do?
Well, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate that very much. Looking forward to hearing the whole story that Allie's going to provide access to.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And in registering for this workshop, you have a complimentary follow-up session where it can be just you or it can be your leadership team, and we can talk about what your needs are, and as you mentioned, Robert, what are your obstacles? Like what's really standing in your way, and how can you work with that and move forward? So I have on the screen my contact information. Blossom has my contact information. And I'm looking forward to scheduling a time to meet with each of you and see, what needs have come out of this class. What on an individual basis do you need to focus on? And then finally, I have my sources slide. Is it coming up? There it is. So these are some of the sources that I used in planning for this. And one of the ones that I found really valuable was actually the difficult conversations, because that's the one that have a lot of resources about honoring feelings, and so they don't come out in awkward ways. I mean, sometimes feelings are just awkward, but how you can keep moving forward while having those feelings. So again, thank you very much for your time today. I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to scheduling a follow-up with you.